friend of a friend. If you know someone, go to welcome-estates.com and click the Refer a Friend link. If they buy, you'll pocket a nice chunky thank you from one of Spain's leading estate agents. T's and C's apply. All details at welcome-estates.com.
Not aware of anything.
Okay.
No, do you know what? Not heard. You know, the UCAD's not informed me. Benn not informed me. No fuckers informed me. I were in Costa Coffee having a coffee, and going through Instagram where this breaking news. This is when I've heard it, when I've seen it in Costa. That's all I know. It's still ongoing. I've spoke to Benn today. Going mad with him, like, what's going on, Benn? Why? Do you know anything about it? And he's saying, it's just like, I've just actually been at gym early this morning, an early session. I've been asleep, switched my phone off from it. So I'm still not, this is definitely ongoing. I need to know what's going off. Like, why aren't I being informed this guy's been cheating in a fight what happened over a year ago, and I've just heard about it today.
Amir Khan, God help us. Of all the people who had to pop for something, Amir Khan, why? What an absolute mess this is. And the reason it's a mess is it seems to be the antithesis of the Conor Benn situation. I'd almost argue that if I was Conor Benn, I'd want to be in Amir Khan's situation. And if I was in Amir Khan's situation, I might want to be in Conor Benn's situation in terms of how they position themselves. So here's what we know. Amir Khan's been given a 2-year ban, which started on April 6th, 2022. That means in just over 1 year, Amir Khan will be free to do whatever he wants in a sporting context. Until then, he can do absolutely nothing. He cannot participate in a regulated and governed sport. He cannot coach. He cannot be around athletes. And athletes seen around him may also be subject to a ban. So he's in a tricky position, but then he's a retired boxer. Does he really care? When you're suspended, if ever he wanted to dope, this might be the time to do it because no one has a right to test him. So when I first heard this, I was like, good, throw the book at this guy, give him 4 years. That's what I first thought. And then I rolled back and I read the paperwork around this. And then I went back. I don't know if you guys remember. And there are more diligent people in Twitter land and podcast land than I am. I don't remember VADA saying VADA welcomes Amir Khan and VADA welcomes Kell Brook to the testing program for their upcoming fight. And VADA normally announces stuff on their website. I don't remember there being anything about that. So if someone can confirm whether VADA was involved, I'd be more than grateful. I don't believe they were. Although that would make it weird to say that Amir Khan was invoiced £8,000 by VADA for whatever it was. No idea. But that whole point comes back to something. Do you remember in early January, Amir Khan said, hold on, guys, I've been in camp for 4 weeks and no one's tested me. And Amir Khan was the guy who was pushing the testing agenda, going, if I haven't been tested, Kell Brook hasn't been tested. We're 4 weeks into camp. We're not far off fighting. I think they're probably about 6 or 7 weeks out from fighting. And they hadn't been tested. Now, from what I understand, according to the official document, Amir Khan was tested on January 20th and January 21st by USADA in Colorado, where he was training with Terence Crawford. He was also tested on the 12th and the 19th of February in the United Kingdom. So I imagine the 12th would have been the Saturday before, and the 19th would have been fight night. Of those 4 tests, he passed 3. The 4th one, he tested positive for Osterine. So that's February the 19th. He doesn't get notified that he's failed his test. No, this is just the A sample, by the way, till April 6th. And then obviously the anti-doping process kicks in with your B samples needing to be tested, this, that, and the third. But let's just focus on that initial period. These two are engaged in one of the biggest fights in British boxing. Yes, it wasn't what it could have been at their peaks, but it's still a big fight regardless in Manchester. And there's no VADA testing. There's no record of it. They're going fight. There's no record of VADA being involved in Amir Khan versus Kelbrook. Now, if you ask me honestly, do I think both those guys were juicing? In my honest opinion, I think they were both juicing. It's about who gets caught. These guys know that they're going to fight each other. That's why these negotiations are so protracted, because these guys are there going, well, let me live my life and, take all the supplements and vitamins I need to. And then when the fight's signed, come off everything. So I can sell through the testing process. And I'm still going to get the residual benefits because the stuff is doing what it needs to do already. Just get rid of the metabolites and just have the improved performance. So I imagine that's probably what happened in this case. The sad thing is, it looks like they'd both done everything correctly apart from Amir Khan. And when I saw that he would pop for Osterine, my first instinct was, that's got to be a spiked supplement. And here's why. Osterine's a terrible thing for a boxer to take in fight week. When you're trying to cut weight and all these, so you don't want things like that. Now, if he had popped for a diuretic, I'd have understood that. If he had popped for clenbuterol, I'd have understood that. But Osterine, what's Osterine's main use? It's just a bridge between steroid cycles. That's all Osterine is. It's an 8-week opportunity for your body to reset all of its receptors before it then goes again on the juice. And it just stops you losing all the gains that you've made, and it keeps you able to perform at a reasonable level for long enough until the gear kicks in again. Why you would take that in fight week, and that's the argument here, right? Because if you passed your test on the 12th of Feb, UCAT test, and you failed the UCAT test on February 19th, that doesn't give you a lot of up and down time to take Osterine. And Osterine is not the sort of thing that you take as a one-off. It has zero benefit on a one-off basis. By the way, for all the people thinking they can be slick and take this stuff, it will mess up your blood work. It will mess up your endocrine profile. There are negative consequences to taking Osterine. So don't see this as a recommendation or an endorsement of anything. Be very wise, do your research. And if you're not getting paid to compete in anything, just don't bother. Please don't bother. So Osterine is just a messy drug to be taking for a sportsman, because in fight week it gives you no appreciable benefit. I can understand people taking stuff like testosterone suspension, which is in and out your system in under an hour, right? You might take a hit of that before a fight, go into the bathroom, your mate injects you in the backside, bang, you're good to go, you're fired up, you feel bulletproof, and you go. And by the time you come out of the fight, that stuff's gone. Yeah, I understand all of that. That would make sense to me. Cheek drops, stuff like that. All that stuff that works in very, very short, intense bursts makes perfect sense. Osterine doesn't. It's not even the best SARM out there. So when I first heard this, I was like, and I tweeted this to Dave Caldwell, this is probably the most plausible case of spiked supplements I can think of. Amir Khan has far too much money, far too much experience. He's been in this game long enough that if he has a record of cheating, he knows what not to do. So I put the argument through that maybe it was a spiked supplement, a pre-workout, an energy drink. It can always be that. And the reason I say that is I sort of know people in that world, in that sort of supplement world, and they'll tell you, your pre-workouts are normally spiked with something. That's why they work so well. So some of them are spiked with amphetamine to give you more energy, make you feel alert, make you feel a bit more bulletproof when you train. Some are spiked with Osterine, because then you get the kind of anabolic effects as well. If you keep taking on a consistent basis, you get this anabolic effect, and you feel that, wow, my pre-workout's making me feel incredible right now. So there's all sorts of reasons why people would deliberately spike their supplements with far stronger compounds, because really they're selling to the general population. And as a member of the general population, you actually don't care if there's, a small dose of amphetamine in your pre-workout. You don't care. You don't care if there's a bit of Osterine blended into your creatine powder. That's only going to benefit you. But what it does is, in a battle where everyone's competing over who's got the best supplements, it can give you an edge. So the athletes are doping, and the supplement manufacturers are doping too, that they're doping their supplements. So it's just a permanent cycle of doping. But we live in a world of doping. Instagram filters are doping. You know, that facade you put on Twitter, hiding behind the dog profile picture, that's also doping. All of this is doping. You're cheating the system to get an advantage. It's the world we live in, and that doesn't excuse Amir Khan, because strict liability is strict liability, by the way. So I'm not going to deviate from that. I have some sympathy. You took a spiked supplement, cool, but it's a spiked supplement nonetheless. You took it. So that's where I feel sorry for Amir Khan. Because I do see that being a plausible argument. I'm not saying it's the truth. I see that as being a plausible argument. And I saw the hell he got on social media. And I think it's right. Like, we need this as boxing fans. I think the problem is it's sort of fake outrage, isn't it? People just want to kick him when he's down a bit. That's really what this is with Amir Khan. Kick him when he's down, because it helps us all feel good about ourselves. Yeah, we do. We're doing it to Conor Benn. We did it to Dillian for a bit. We do it in general, don't we? We kick people when they're down. And it's like, okay, cool, I get it. But how many of you are really disgusted? How many of you would walk away and not watch a Conor Benn fight until he clears his name? Not many. So the Twitter outrage feels pretty fake to me, because I don't think it's principled enough. And it should be more principled, and it should say, look, we're not going to support these drug cheats. And for now, Amir Khan is a drug cheat. I'm not saying it's intentional, but the rules are the rules. So to see Kell Brook jump out and start giving Amir Khan a kick, and I guess morally he's got the right to do it, but this is a guy that not long ago was sniffing cocaine off a table and acting the fool. So where does he get off talking to people about clean living and doing the right thing? Where does he get off? And you know, the way that he was snorting that cocaine, there's nothing he wouldn't do. So if someone was to ask me my honest opinion, I don't believe Kell Brook was clean in that fight. I don't believe Kell Brook's been clean for a long time. I believe he has access to the knowledge, expertise, and intelligence to make sure that he does it the right way. They know what supplements to take. I'm sure they test everything to make sure that there's nothing in there. And it's the right thing to do. They're professionals, a professional outfit. But let's just let's work out the story. What is the Amir Khan story right now? So the Amir Khan story is he goes and trains up in Colorado with Terence Crawford, Bomac, and all that team. Fine. He gets tested by USADA because UCAD asked. They said, look, he's out there. Can you just test him? Because we don't know if he's trying to run away. So USADA tested him twice. Comes back negative. Lovely. Then he comes back to the UK. And he gets tested on the 12th and the 19th. First test, sweet. He's clear. Second test, he's not. So he then gets notified on the 6th, and then he has to make his arrangements. It's not till July they say, mate, you got a case to answer. So when people say, why do these things take so long? Just look at that timeline. You failed in February. Then it's 6 weeks until they've notified you. Then you got to get your B sample tested. Once that comes back positive, whenever that's done, now there's a whole process you got to go through to go, right, now there's a case to answer. Go and get your lawyers. Because UCAD did. They lawyered up. They got, which firm was it? Bird and Bird? Whew. So that should be a worry to Conor Benn, because if UCAD have Bird and Bird on retainer, they're one of the better law firms in the world of sport. Don't buy into all of these guys you see on Twitter telling you that they're good sports lawyers. Bird and Bird, monsters. Absolute monsters. Yeah, I think in the trade they just call them two birds. And then Amir Khan sort of lawyered up with Blackstone Chambers, which Blackstone Chambers are essentially the Real Madrid of sports law. And I remember, because I did my assessed mini pupillage at Blackstone Chambers years ago, because it's like 20 years ago. And it used to be run by a guy called Michael Beloff, QC at the time, but probably KC. Now, Michael Beloff was also president of Trinity College, Oxford, and was an amazing sounding board for me throughout my law degree. Like, really good man. He is famous. He's the guy. I don't know if you guys remember, you Tottenham fans will remember this. When the FA threw the book at Tottenham and banned them from the FA Cup, took points off them, basically tried to crush Tottenham. Michael Belov was the guy that got everything overturned. So if you ever see the video clips of that, you'll see him. He's the guy with the big beard and he comes out looking all smug. That's Michael Belov, QC. Intellectual monster. Really, really smart man. So he's built a thriving practice of some of the best sports barristers in this country, if not all of them. So everyone's lawyered up well here. How much are you looking at an hour for one of those Blackstone barristers? You might be looking at £1,000 an hour. 600 quid to £1,000 an hour, depending on who you get. That's crazy, isn't it? 600 quid to £1,000 an hour you're lawyering up for. You kind of lawyering up with Bird and Bird for probably about $350 an hour for their solicitors. So this is why guys like Liam Cameron don't do appeals, because you got to really, really lawyer up and make sure that you got that firepower. So in July, Khan gets told you got a case to answer. Time to lawyer up, get your act together. August, the board then say, right, we're going to go for arbitration on this. And then it goes to the National Anti-Doping Panel. And I think that was held in, well, I know Khan had to make submissions in September, October time. And then that kind of ran through. You look at the arguments and they do it in person. I don't think it was till like early this year where the final bits were done and it was all kind of wrapped up. And so what were the key questions? So there's no debate that the Ostarine was in Khan's system. He doesn't dispute that. He says he doesn't ingest it intentionally. And they go back and forth between their respective scientists. And so the key argument in Amir Khan's one is, if I was clean on February 12th, how much could I have possibly ingested to have popped for that small amount by the time it was February 19th? That was really the core question, how much? And so they did their various forms of analysis, and they looked at traditional doping protocols for Ostarine, and it's like, do you take 10 milligrams or 25 milligrams a day? And so from a half-life perspective, what would that mean if you were clean when the test was administered till fight night? And the truth is, they came at a number like you'd be taking 3 milligrams, 3 milligrams as a one-off dose, not 3 milligrams a day for that final week. 3 milligrams is a one-off dose. Ostarine's not administered as a one-off dose, as I said before. It doesn't work that way. And so you couldn't show a pattern of consistent usage. The numbers just didn't back that up. And so it pointed to potential contamination. That's the only, so the contamination is the thing that requires the least assumptions. As I've said earlier, spiking these things isn't hard, right? There's the supplement arms race to make your thing more potent, but there's also the manufacturing challenges. So Ostarine is not for human consumption. Ostarine is essentially something that one of the big pharmaceutical companies thought would be good. So I think Ostarine was developed to deal with osteoporosis, and that might be why it's called Ostarine, I don't know. But essentially, it was designed to deal with osteoporosis and to stop sort of muscle and bone wasting in people as they got older. For various reasons, people were like, I don't think this is good for humans. It's probably not potent enough. And so it just ends up being a research chemical. People then get that, start playing around with the molecules to try and make it more potent, to try and target the muscle a bit more. But essentially, no pharmaceutical company makes Ostarine. So where's it made? It's made in like industrial units. In some cases, someone's garage. Like, that's not unusual for these things to be made in someone's garage. Now, why is that an issue? You know, wherever Pfizer or AstraZeneca have their manufacturing facility, it has to be certified to a certain level, whether it's ISO 9000, ISO 27000, whatever. It has to be certified to a certain level of quality. And so let's take the stuff that Conor Benn popped for, clomiphene. When they make clomiphene, nothing else can be made in the same facility because you can't risk contamination. That's a real danger, and the lawsuits will be incredible. But in your backyard labs, your underground labs, your industrial units, somewhere in deepest, darkest Wolverhampton, these factories are making pre-workout on one side of the building. They're making testosterone on the other side of the building. And maybe they're trying to make growth hormone or IGF-LR3 around the back here, and there's some ostarine and some SARMs popping off over here. So what do you think is going to happen? Yeah, ventilation is crap. These guys are running around in hazmat suits and masks, whatever it is they wear, but the ventilation is piss poor. It's not world-class ventilation, and it definitely hasn't been certified as a manufacturing facility. So stuff's going to float around. You're going to use the same vat, the same bath to make ostarine as you did to make the pre-workout, so you don't clean these things out perfectly. Most stuff that people take is probably contaminated. If they could be bothered to test it, it's probably contaminated with something, just for that reason. They don't have pharmaceutical-grade manufacturing facilities, so you take that risk. It's not unusual. So I'll give you an example, and I do know this for absolute certain. There were women who were taking Anavar, and they thought they were getting, I can't remember, 10 milligram tablets of Anavar. But there was no Anavar, and it was just spiked with testosterone. And these women couldn't understand why they were masculinizing so fast on Anavar. Like 7 weeks. I mean, a lot of women felt the effects. Gains were through the roof. So they're like, yes, this is really potent, but I'm feeling a lot of side effects because it was just dosed with testosterone. Oxandrolone, which is what Anavar is an incredibly expensive compound. It's expensive to make. That's why it still retails really high. So you can get 20 weeks worth of TTM, testosterone, tren, and masteron for the cost of 7 weeks of Anavar on a course-by-course basis. So no one wants to spend money making Anavar, so they just spike it with test, with a little, maybe even a little bit of tren in there, just so when you go to the gym, you're like, wow, this is amazing. And you'll buy it again. And before you know it, you've masculinized. Like, I don't know how the hell that's happened. So that whole backyard supplement world that people love to participate in, you take your health in your own hands. So just be very careful what you're doing. And I imagine that's what's happened with Khan. Someone's given him a pre-workout. God knows where, man. It might just be called, don't know, man, energy boost, jolly juice. I don't know. Something like that. And he's taken it. And he's gone, need to get my energy up before this fight. And he's just drunk that, and it's come up. Probably did nothing for him in the fight, and it's come up. But that's no excuse, and that's not me saying he's innocent. I'm just saying, what a dumb way to get caught. But I don't think Amir Khan's a cheat. Nothing about him up until that point would have suggested that he cheated. And I don't think he was protesting too loudly when he said there was no testing. I think Amir Khan kind of knew he was on the down slope, and he just said, I'll just try my best. So I feel for him. But I do love the fact that they did a really rigorous analysis of, okay, if we run through a scenario of he was taking it before the 12th, what would he have to have taken and why would it have been missed? If he was taking it afterwards, what would have happened? So all these scenarios, because, how do you explain this? When you're defending yourself against anti-doping, there's always an assumption that, well, if you just show us the supplement, we can test it, or we can go and buy one and test it, and people assume that's the only way you can defend yourself. But actually, in the WADA rules in 2015, I know they've been updated in 2021, it's not so much that. They've come to the conclusion that defense is more of an art. So if you can string together logical and probable causes or sequences of events that may give rise to an inadvertent ingestion, then they have to give credence to that too. And I think that's kind of where Khan ends up. And that's why he got the 2-year ban and not the 4-year ban he should have got. Now, why is this terrible for Conor Benn? I'll tell you why it's terrible for Conor Benn. Number one, if even 10% of the people commenting on Twitter go and read this, they will be so well prepared for when Conor Benn has to face up to this, that he won't be able to spin anything. You know, this is what Simon Jordan should be reading. Simon Jordan should be delving elbow deep into this report and this finding. Because once you read this, and you can find it online, but once you read it, you'll understand that it's a pretty rigorous process. Like, these are pretty heavy-hitting guys who sit around the table. So just to compete with that, man, it's going to be very expensive for Conor Benn. But what it also shows is there's a lot of scenario analysis required. So for Conor Benn to explain why he failed 2 tests is going to be a problem, because what they can do is they can calculate the the clearance time of clomiphene, and they can calculate the half-life. So they can go, okay, let's just assume it left you after the second test, and they can work backwards and go, so at a certain point, this thing was through the roof. Why was it through the roof, Conor? Why would you have clomiphene in you? You're saying it's lab contamination. It feels like it probably isn't lab contamination because the amounts in there are not consistent with lab contamination. If it was in a backyard testing lab, I'd 100% understand that. But not in a world-class testing lab, it's not. You don't get those sorts of errors. So you have to ask Conor Benn this question. Why would you have clomiphene without a prescription? Now, if you got a prescription, you'd have a therapeutic use exemption. There wasn't one. So why would you self-medicate with clomiphene? You'd only do that if you were hiding something. And the real worry is if Conor Benn does have to face a UCAD panel, and I know people say the board don't recognize VADA, and that's cool. But I think UCAD may do, because if you remember the Adam Mackay scenario, he got caught with Clomid on SAS Who Dares Wins. It just so happened he was still a licensed boxer. So UCAD said, hold on. There's a professional boxer on here who's been found with Clomid. Is it his Clomid? And the TV show had to confirm, yeah, that wasn't part of the show, that it was, in fact, his Clomid. And so they said, right, you got Clomid, but you don't have a therapeutic use exemption. Do you have a prescription for it? No, I just got told to take it. So, yeah, so they said, why have you got that? And why did you have the aromatase inhibitor with you? Now, why are you even taking those on SAS Who Dares Wins? So he never failed the test. UCAD intervened because of what they saw on TV. So this idea that you can't have a panel, you can't convene a panel or have a hearing because it's VADA and not UCAD isn't true. You can do, because UCAD can intervene in anything where they're like, hold on, there's a real doping concern here. And if UCAD can intervene, that means the board have jurisdiction too. That's what Conor Benn's scared of. That's why he gave up the license, because his lawyers would have read the Adam Mackay situation and realized they can get us on this. So I don't expect Conor Benn to reapply for his license anytime soon. And in terms of having a meeting with the board, how can you have a meeting with the board when you're a civilian? What are you having a meeting about? The board has no jurisdiction until you have a license, so what are you having a meeting about? So when Hearn says, I want to get Conor Benn and Robert Smith in a room together, they can't. Robert Smith hasn't got jurisdiction, and Conor Benn is not under the guidance or protection of the board. So just to be absolutely clear, the board and UCAD have every right to intervene over two failed VADA tests, because they've shown that they will take jurisdiction where it looks like there's clear and obvious doping that needs to be investigated, even if their testing didn't catch it. They are UK anti-doping, not just UK drug testing. So Conor Benn's in a real pickle right now. And he knows that he can't move. Because if you look at Conor Benn's case, right, it's a simple logical case. And I'm surprised that the TalkSport guys couldn't figure this out quicker. There are only two possible scenarios that Conor Benn can refer to. The lab contaminated his sample deliberately on 4 occasions. A sample, B sample, A sample 2, B sample 2. They would have had to do this on 4 occasions. Here's the thing. There'll be a chain of custody that tells you where each one of those samples was and who worked on it. And I'm confident when they reveal that audit, you'll find out the same people didn't touch it. And not only that, but they had no idea whose it was. So that's going to be a reach for him to establish. The second one was inadvertent ingestion. And people are saying he could have taken it in through eggs. Conor Benn himself has said, it wasn't in me. I didn't eat eggs. I didn't eat beef. He said it himself. He did not ingest this. This is contamination. That's Conor Benn's argument. The WBC's argument is it is not contamination through lab or anything like that. It's most likely through eggs. One of them's wrong. If the WBC are wrong, then Conor Benn would have sued already. If Conor Benn's wrong, then he doesn't know his own physiology. Now, the problem is Eddie Hearn keeps telling you the WBC have cleared him. But it's like, well, yes, they've cleared him. But your fighter has spoken and said their decision is wrong. So how have they cleared him? And at least with Amir Khan, like, he put his hands up and said, yeah, it was in me. I didn't take it deliberately. Here's the evidence. And it was pretty much done. And I wish more people were like that. Just take the ban and move on. And I hope Conor Benn learns from this, mate. Take the damn ban and move on. So now let's talk about everything else. So Ben Shalom comes out. And actually, in one of Ben Shalom's best performances in front of a camera since he linked up with Sky, credit where credit's due, he told us he didn't find out until it was, in the public domain. Same with Kell Brook. And what people don't understand is UCAD only have a duty to notify the board. However the board choose to then discuss it subsequent to that is up to them. But it's the board who determines who needs to be known. Now, the thing is, Ben Shalom doesn't have a contract with UCAD. Kell Brook doesn't have a contract with UCAD. UCAD have no duty to notify Kell Brook about any test that he's not party to. So let's say, for example, Amir Khan had failed a test on February 12th. UCAD would have notified the board, and the board would have said we're suspending Amir Khan. And that would have been the first Kell Brook would have known about it. So the board would have had to ring the promoter and say, we've got to suspend him. So you're going to tell the boxer first, you're suspended. Then you tell the promoter tells the other fighter. But you don't have to do that. And because the fight had already happened after he failed, there was no need for that. The other question is, why people ask why it took so long. You can have other stuff to do, number one. Number two, you got to be able to get Amir Khan in the country. So you got to be able to get Amir Khan in the country with his lawyers, and they've got to have time to prepare and to understand everything, and they've got to get time to do their research and their investigations to work out how this could have happened, right? So there's so much work that needs to happen in these sorts of things. That's why they take a long time. And in a way, I'm kind of glad that it took a long time, because at least Amir Khan was able to have due process without the court of public opinion hammering him. He's getting it now, which is deserved, but at least we saw the process work out. And if you've read the paperwork, you'll know. That felt like a very fair hearing. It didn't feel like there was an axe to grind. And so let me say this again. If Conor Benn's got an anti-doping hearing to address, the board aren't the problem. The board have no involvement in an anti-doping hearing. So Conor Benn should be asking to go through the UCAD process, because the board don't get themselves involved in that. The board will simply take the outcome of that and apply it. That's all. But I didn't want to talk too much today, guys. So there's just a quick summary on that. Make of it what you will. People say I'm being softer on Amir Khan than I am Conor Benn. No, strict liability is strict liability. I think both of them should be banned. I'm just more sympathetic to Amir Khan's case, because I've heard so many stories, not from tested athletes, just people in general, about spiked supplements, and people having their blood work ruined, blood pressure changes, all that sort of stuff. So it's worth just saying, as a PSA, man, be very careful out there. Just a quick one I want to touch on is, I was reading today that, heartbreak for Ellie Scotney. She doesn't get to fight for a world title on the Katie Taylor undercard. They're saying Chantel Cameron's the reason behind it. I think it's simpler than that. I think it's this. If the McGuigans had problems with the people that used to be in boxing a year ago, I don't even know if Dublin's a safe place for them to be. Just saying that. I don't know if Dublin's a safe place for them to be. And maybe that's the conversation that's happened, where it's like, I don't know if these guys want to be in Dublin. And therefore, maybe we should put Ellie Scotney on a show where we don't have to think about those concerns. I just have a feeling that it's not Chantal Cameron. I think someone has just said, maybe we don't want that person in this area, considering the tensions that they've had over, well, clearly a number of their fighters, right? Taylor, who was it? Taylor, Chantal Cameron, Carl Frampton, and a few others. So maybe that's what this is really about, that certain people can't go to Dublin. But don't quote me on that. But hopefully Elle gets to fight on a big card like a Joshua White card, man. Eddie should look after her because she's been loyal. She could have gone to Sky a long time ago, but she's been loyal, man. She's Team Eddie. Like I don't just say that to curry favor. She's Team Eddie, and she's a good soldier for Matchroom. And I hope they appreciate that, and I hope they show loyalty to her. On that note, let me tap out and go and get some food. And thank you for listening as always, and just understand it's always appreciated. You guys take care.
Porky's Corner is proud to be sponsored by Spartan Site Solutions. They are specialists in civil engineering and demolition contracts for the construction industry. Interested parties should visit their website or contact Porky's Corner for a referral at porkycorner@mail.com.